Hey guys, Micah from Black Bear Custom Kydex. Today we're going to be looking at this piggyback system that I've just built for my customer Young. And Young asked me to build him, obviously, a setup for a tops Chete and a tops dart. These are two very difficult knives to put into Kydex for a couple of different reasons. And we're going to go ahead and dig right into those details to start. So it's going to start with a little bit of that kind of educational material. You know how I like to kind of do the slow build up and then talk about the actual system that I've created here for him. But I'll try to do it quicker than I normally do because I know this is going to be a little bit of a long video. This is just a system I'm really pleased with. All right, so why is the Chete a difficult knife to put into Kydex? You've got this giant hefty hunk of steel, so inherently you're going to have some issues with retention because it is a very weighty knife, and that in it of itself makes a little bit of a challenge for Kydex. The other thing is you have this big sweeping belly and a saddled spine. And with those two things, it means that your Kydex is going to be formed around these curves. And so you have to draw out at a curve, which is going to inevitably, it's just not going to go out perfectly smoothly. You're going to end up kind of snagging your cutting edge in between the crease of the layers down below, or kind of pinching it up at the top. You get this kind of jittery draw where it's bouncing in and out. And I don't really like that. I'd like to just create something that draws and sheaths very smoothly. So how I do my Chetes is I actually have a second Chete that I keep prepped at all times. So this is my test fit Chete, and the other one I have prepped permanently. So there's a piece of 1/4 inch thick wood that is straight on the top, and that straight line meets up with this point here on the blade. The bottom of it, of course, just traces the shape of the knife on the top of the spine. And with that, you get plenty of clearance on your way out. So you can see the spine of the Chete sheath here is very straight. And that's ideal so that you don't have any kind of snagging on the blade. So you can see it just kind of draws in and out very smoothly. Then, of course, you get that nice little Kydex click on the way in. All right, as far as retention goes, I put some stuff up under the handle so that this point here, since this point, which would normally be the ideal location on a knife, is just not enough material for the Kydex to grip onto and hold that knife in place. So I use the second choil here as my primary retention point. I also fill up this space here, but I have a little bevel cut into the wood that fills up the finger choil on the steel, so that the bottom of this choil is also used ever so slightly for retention. So that's pretty much it for the Chete. Now for the tops dart, this one was very interesting. If you don't already know what the shape of the dart is, I think when you look at this, you would have no idea that in fact the sheath and the knife look very little alike. So let's get that out of there and take a look. It's kind of hard to draw that weird awkward angle left-handed. So this is what the dart looks like. It's this nice, it's a beautiful knife. I love this thing, but it's got that big aggressive recurve to it. And that recurve poses a really interesting challenge, kind of for the same reasons as the Chete, but a little more severe even. And it is that this portion of the blade is broader than this portion of the blade. And especially when you get over to the choil, this portion is very narrow compared with this. So if you formed over this without any prep work, you go to draw this out and you're immediately going to be kind of pinching the fat belly down here through the entire length of the sheath that was formed over here. That's a no-go, guys. It's going to leave wear marks, residue, might even cause scratching because you'll have debris pinching in there, you know, dirt getting squeezed in that crease, and you're just raking your steel through that dirt. I just don't agree with that type of sheath. I think it's a bad idea. It kind of ruins knives. You know, it doesn't feel good to draw it, doesn't feel good to sheath it. On every level, it's a bad idea, in my opinion. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. The other thing that some guys will do, this is not the appropriate size piece of material, but some guys will just say, oh, there's a recurve or there's a fuller or whatever, and they'll just throw a block of wood on there, something like this. They'll tape it on both sides, and then they'll press the sheath. And yes, that does work. It completely resolves the issue of clearance and space and blocking. However, I don't think that that has a very subtle look to it at all. You can just see this big bubble of material under there. And I'm not saying it's a function problem. I think it functions just fine. To me, it's just an aesthetic problem. It doesn't have any any style or grace to it, and it's just kind of a no-go. So I like to focus on these more subtle blocking techniques. In this case, what I've done is I've just taken a piece of aluminum flashing. This part of it fits the choil. This part actually sits into the plunge grind, and then just try to have roughly parallel cutting edge. This matches up with the widest part of the cutting edge, and this keeps the rest of the grind blocked off. So one of these on either side of the knife, and then a little piece of MDF that kind of sits in the choil to keep the flashing from getting pinched in to form, a very obvious dent or something there. So with this, you get a really subtle form. Is it perfect? No, of course not. You can kind of see this light spot here. That's just catching the light off of what was the top of the flashing. You can see I'm tracing the top of the flashing, right, all the way back here. Whereas this, now I'm tracing the actual grind of the steel. So there is some small imperfection there. It's really, really difficult to actually completely mitigate that. But I think I've done a pretty good job here at creating something that gives you the kind of best of both worlds. It's mostly hidden. It's mostly invisible to the naked eye. If you catch the right light, of course, you'll see it a little bit. But even when you do see it, even when you know what you're looking at, it's not super obvious. And of course, it does the job. That's the most important thing. It gives you that really nice smooth clearance so you're not scraping on your way in and out of the sheath. And your only point of resistance is the only point that actually matters, which is your retention divot, as I call it. So there you go. It's got that really nice snap, that lock in, and a pretty springy draw. As far as the retention goes, all I do is I'm kind of sand down some wood and glue it all together to make this piece that fits up under the knife. It preps space for this finger guard. It preps space for the lobe of the handle here. And it also has that beveled shape there on both sides, which allows the Kydex to form in somewhat, but not entirely. The purpose of that is to give you that click, but also to give you relief. Now, there's another technique with, retention where you don't put anything under the handle at all. And when you make when you cut your profile, you just cut it so close to the actual knife that you find a point where the Kydex forms enough around it to give you good retention, but not too much, so you can still draw, you can still get the knife back in, and that's all well and good. The problem with that is that on the majority of knives, every single sheath I've ever owned that was cut like that, your retention points kind of look like this when you get an aerial view of it. And so you go and you push past it, and you're actually doing this to that point. You're kind of collapsing it, and then it springs back. The reason that's a problem is because over time, that flexing right there, that collapsing, is going to start wearing that opening of the sheath. And after a few hundred draws, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, you're probably going to notice that your knife has less retention in that sheath. And eventually, it's going to have almost no retention. It might stay to a point that's still satisfactory to you, but if it changes, to me, that's a problem. So I like to do what I call a retention divot, which gives you some lock-in material that's actually aggressively gripping the handle, but then some flare out afterward. And the reason that flare out is important, if you notice, when you start to put this handle into that point, first off, it just fits the opening perfectly. It's not forcing its way in. And then as you push, watch this gap right here. It starts to spread it because it's moving along an incline. It's moving along a ramp. Once you've overcome it, it snaps shut and you're good to go. That little bit of flex that occurs is not enough to cause any damage, and it will last a lifetime. So heirloom quality in every aspect of the build, excuse me, in every aspect of the build is the goal. All right, so let's talk about the build itself, guys. This is a really exciting one. I think this is probably, man, it's so hard. There's so many fun knives that come through, or so many fun sheath requests I get, that it's hard to like nail down favorites. But I would say that this is probably my top 5 for 2024, easily. And the reason why this one is kind of set apart, to me anyway, is because my customer asked me to use these specific colors. We've got True Hide Whiskey, which is this brown one, and Black Armor, sorry, Armor Black Raptor, which is the black, obviously. So True Hide is this texture, and Raptor is this texture, and then you have your color delineations. There are different colors of each option here, but this black and brown I think is really, really nice. I think it goes together well, and that little bit of a texture change makes a really nice pop for each, in my opinion. But let me know, what do you guys think of this color combo down in the comments. So in the instance where both of these were leather textured Kydex prints, I decided that the best way to go would be to kind of observe maybe some traditional leather sheaths that have inlays. Inlays are traditionally different material other than leather, although you can use the same exact piece of leather and just cut an inlay, whatever you want to do. However, it looks best when you have a different texture and a different color, and you get that real nice pop. It just looks so cool. So what I did was I kind of created the inlay concept. Now these are both totally full double layer sheaths. You have the full first layer is solid True Hide Whiskey, and then on the top you have different cuts of the Armor Black. In this case, you have a full piece, and I've just cut those 3 windows out. It is the same on both sides, by the way, and that gives you that really nice kind of leather inlay effect. I just think that looks super, super classy. On the Chete, you have a slightly different cut. I chose to do them a little bit differently since the 2 knives are so different shaped. I thought it would be cool to just add a slightly different style and flair to each one. So I have sort of my traditional reinforcement plate looking end on this, and then I have a bigger piece here with a giant window kind of cut out, and this is sort of just a flared shape, a very common shape I saw in the leather inlay world, and I thought it would look really cool on the Chete. So that's what we have there, with that just that little offset line here between the 2 pieces to reveal the whiskey in there. I love this. I think this is a really cool effect, and I will definitely be looking to do more of these kind of inlay but Kydex projects. And in fact, if you guys are interested in getting some leather involved, you know that I do leather over Kydex as well. So if you wanted some real leather inlay over Kydex, we could definitely talk about that. That'd be a cool project to tackle. So there you go. As far as the colors, you've got the retention, the blocking, all of that stuff. How about the actual piggyback system? Breakaway piggybacks are kind of my specialty. This is something I invented a number of years ago. First one I ever made was per a customer's request, where he had already ordered a large sheath off me like a year prior, and he asked if he could send it back to me with a small knife for me to build a sheath for that small one that could actually ride on the large one, no problem. That's pretty standard issue at that point in time. But he wanted it to be able to detach quickly and carry on its own. So I asked him, how do you want it to carry on its own? He had told me small molly locks, and I came up with a very crude and simple initial piggybacks breakaway system, where it was basically like a piece of Kydex like this, kind of spanned at an angle across the face of the larger knife, and the smaller one just had its mollies on the back, and they slipped over it, and you lock them up, and boom, you've got a little breakaway piggyback. That was the very first one in existence. After that, some other customers started asking, well, what if I wanted an ulti-clip on the small knife? Or what if I wanted a tech lock or a dangler or grip hooks or whatever it might be? And from there, I had to kind of start figuring out different methods of creating adapters or different platforms, ways that you can make all of this work and fit. And it kind of ends up being a little bit on the fly for most builds where I have to figure it out. This one, Young took it pretty easy on me. He asked if he could have a Blade Tech mount on it. The tech mount is one of the newer products from Blade Tech. I think it's been out for maybe 8 or 9 months now. But basically what it is a disc or a male part and a receiver or female part, and they simply fit together like so. And then you can depress this lever here. It's a little spring-loaded lever, and it allows you to rotate the male. It's actually really hard to do without something to grip onto. Lets you rotate it 10 degrees before its next click, and you can continue to do that 360 degrees. The reason why it can't pull out there is because when those teeth are gripping into the teeth on the plug, you can see that there are angles that just won't allow for upward movement. But when you depress this, it then allows the disc to spin freely. So it becomes a really, really nice way of attaching. So that's what we've got here on the back of the Tops Dart. We've just mounted it to an adapter plate. This adapter plate is drilled out to have multiple different ride height spacings for your disc. So you can do that. You can also mount it at different angles. This is probably where I would recommend keeping it, just because it rides the most naturally in that position on the El Chete. But of course, if you're going to be moving this to a different platform, which he intends to do, you might want to take it off and experiment with your different options. It's also ambidextrous, by the way. This can be removed and popped over to the other side of the sheath. So this is fully ambidextrous. Now, as far as how he's going to do it on a different platform, he ordered a second tech mount system. So Young is going to get another set of this, and he can put this disc on something else, and he can mount this receiver to something else, and boom, he's got two different items, being the Dart and whatever else is going to have this disc on it, that can interchangeably go onto the different platforms that he's got the receivers on. So you can see the allure to that. It's a really quick and very convenient way of being able to switch and to customize your angle to a very high degree. So as far as it relates to the piggyback system, the only angle that I would personally carry at is right there. I mean, that's it. If you can't hit 10 degrees in either direction, you know, it starts to get a little bit wonky. If you go forward, that's not too bad. I could probably do that. But if you go obviously any further, it's just kind of weird. And if you go rear of your neutral, so here we go, that's the neutral position. If you go tip up from there, that's your next spot. Again, not horrible. That might actually be okay. But one click further, and I mean, that's getting into some strange territory for my taste. So again, the only angle that I would personally carry this at is right there, where pretty much the cutting edges are tracing one another. But when you want to prevent it from popping off, you just move this little tab over to the side. Either side is fine, and the lever can no longer be depressed. Center, and it's unlocked. Boom, you can remove this, go put it on another system, and you're good to go. So guys, this TMMS, or sorry, I said TMMS because that was the previous kind of quick detached system that Blade Tech had created. This tech mount system is brilliant, guys. I love it, and it makes for an excellent option for breakaway piggybacks. There's also a tech mount mini, which I actually like just a little bit more for a few different reasons, but gosh, I mean, these are really nice, guys. Either size is awesome. I think the larger the system, the more likely it is that I would recommend the full size tech mount, and the smaller, obviously, the smaller. The negatives. What are the negatives to using a TMMS? Sorry, I keep saying TMMS. Negatives to using a tech mount. I think the only real negative I can think of is that it does put a pretty significant gap between your two sheaths, and that's unavoidable, guys. It's just the thickness of the actual system that is interfacing with your two sheaths. I don't see any way around that. And to be honest with you, I don't think that really matters too much. It seems worth it to me. I don't really have any negative about that. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. All right, well, I think that's pretty much it for the... Oh, wait, one more important detail. The whole system is riding on this gorgeous baldric sling from none other than Beach and Tactical. Of course, guys, you know I prefer Beach and Tactical to any other sling I've worked with. Jacob's a good dude, and he makes an awesome sling. So if you guys are in need of rifle slings or baldric slings for your knife systems, please check out Beach and Tactical. You can also find Jacob at the Prepper's Bunker Outdoors, Exodus Knife and Tool. He's got a JPG Gear Review or something like JGP. I'm going to screw that up. But anyway, go check out Beach and Tactical. You'll find all of his other social media and companies that he's working on. And yeah, can't speak to it highly enough. All right, guys, that's all I've got. Let me know what you think of these two knives, of Tops knives in general, and of course of this build that is featured here on this episode. All right, like, share, comment, subscribe. Stick around for the next video. God bless.